Looking at live pictures right now outside the Florida governor's office, ground zero for what's now a national debate over Stand Your Ground, the controversial self-defense law under serious attack in the wake of the George Zimmerman murder trial. These demonstrators are demanding the law be repealed in Trayvon Martin's name, and they are vowing not to leave until the Florida governor, Rick Scott, meets them face to face. CNN's Victor Blackwell is on the scene for us. He's joining us now live with the very latest. What's going on, Victor?
Wolf, it's hour 31 of this sit-in in the office of Florida Governor Rick Scott, and the protesters tell me they were heartbroken when the not guilty verdict came in on Saturday night, but they're using their pain, they say, to change the law in Florida, and they say that begins with a conversation with Rick Scott, and they will not stop until they have one. Led by 9-year-old Amon Gabriel, political activists demand to see Florida Governor Rick Scott.
He's actually out of the office today, I'm sorry.
So they wait, singing in the hallway.
We're sitting
And in the reception area.
We who believe in Trayvon cannot rest.
For a second day, several dozen members of Dream Defenders stage a sit-in in the state capitol until Governor Rick Scott meets with them. Ahmad Abuznaid is the group's policy director.
We'd like the repeal of Stand Your Ground or some type of modification where we can hold people responsible to a level that, humanity expects.
The Stand Your Ground law, which allows citizens who feel threatened to fight back without first retreating, is on the books in more than 20 states. The 2012 shooting of Trayvon Martin sparked nationwide demonstrations, and Saturday's acquittal of George Zimmerman has renewed the opposition to Stand Your Ground.
If the state of Florida is fine with 17-year-olds being gunned down and nothing happening about it, I think the state of Florida needs a check.
However, Governor Scott impaneled a group to review the law. It suggested no changes. Governor Scott agreed. He spoke about it today in Pensacola.
I took advice from the president. We had great people on that committee. They went around the state and listened about the Stand Your Ground laws, and they came back and said we shouldn't change it, and I agree with them.
No special session of the legislature for it at all?
Justice now!
Pressure bust pipes.
State Representative Alan Williams introduced a bill to overturn Stand Your Ground last session.
I believe that these students are bringing the appropriate amount of passion and concern to a cause that hopefully will put pressure on the entire system to say we must do something.
And we're sitting for justice. Peace, y'all.
Wolf, the state Senate president says there will be no special session to pass what the protesters are hoping will be called the Trayvon Martin Act, which would also eliminate zero-tolerance policies in schools and deal with racial profiling in the state. Now, there have been exchanges between my producer and the governor's communications director all day, 6 to 10 emails asking the specific question, will the governor speak with these protesters? There has not been a direct answer, but our request for an interview was declined. Wolf?
Victor Blackwell in Tallahassee for us. Let us know if that changes. Thank you. The Zimmerman juror who sat down exclusively with our own Anderson Cooper this week is also weighing in on Florida's laws in a new statement issued exclusively to CNN. In it, she says this: my prayers are with all those who have the influence and power to modify the laws that left me with no verdict option other than not guilty in order to remain within the instructions. No other family should be forced to endure what the Martin family has endured. That statement comes after she told Anderson in part 2 of her interview she believes George Zimmerman was justified in shooting Trayvon Martin.
In your heart and in your head, you are 100% convinced that George Zimmerman, in taking out his gun and pulling the trigger, did nothing wrong.
I'm 101% that he should have done what he did, except for the things that he did before.
You mean he shouldn't have gotten out of the car, he shouldn't have pursued Trayvon Martin, but in the final analysis, in the final struggle,
when the end came, the end,
he was justified.
He was justified in shooting Trayvon Martin.
Juror B37 also says in her statement she won't be doing any more interviews. Joining us now with some reaction is the Martin family attorney, Benjamin Crump. Mr. Crump, thanks very much for coming in.
Thank you for having me, Wolf.
Give me in a nutshell your quick reaction to what we heard from this juror who said that the 6 women on the jury, they really had no choice given the instructions they were given by the judge.
Well, I think that certainly we have to do something about the stand your ground law because it encourages people to feel like they can initiate, be the aggressor, confront somebody, and then if they are losing, can shoot somebody and say, I was standing my ground, or it was self-defense. It makes no sense when you really think about it. You can't start the book in the middle of the book. You have to start at the beginning. He profiled Trayvon Martin, followed him, got out his car to follow him, and then minutes later, Trayvon is shot in the heart. It's hard for me to think about the jury, what she said, as being they had no choice because at that time, well, what happened to lead up to that? And that's very important, Wolf. And we can never, ever let people forget he made a conscious decision to get out his car and chase a kid who was running away from him. And that's why people are so passionate, because we all see that this could be anybody's child, as Sabrina Fulton has said.
Listen to what else this juror, B37 as she's called, what she said about what Trayvon Martin did that night that she thought was a mistake. Listen to this.
Oh, I believe he played a huge role in his death. He could have, when George confronted him, and he could have walked away and gone home. He didn't have to do whatever he did and come back and be in a fight.
So you hear her effectively blaming Trayvon Martin, at least in part, for his own death.
Yeah, and it's really troubling because listen to what she says. And normally we don't comment on jurors as officials of the court, but she came out rather quickly and started giving interviews about, you know, her service. She says an adult confronted a child, and because the child didn't get away fast enough or decided that they were going to defend themselves, we should blame the child. It just flies in the face of common sense when you really think about it. Trayvon ran from him. We have objective evidence from the 911 tapes. We have the friend he was with on the phone, and it's clear to everybody Trayvon was running away from George Zimmerman, and George Zimmerman ran after him, and now we're going to blame the kid. And it was beautiful to see the young people demonstrating, because this is really about children, and this is every parent's worst nightmare, that a stranger will follow your kid don't know who this person is. We teach our children not to interact with strangers, to run from them, and that's what happens. So what do we tell our children now, Wolf? What do we tell little black and brown boys walking down the street after this verdict when the next person confronts them? There's a precedent set, and that is something we have to address, or we're going to see this play out again and again.
Do you think the prosecution did a good job?
Well, the family, we applaud Angela Corey's office for bringing this case. We know it was not something other prosecutors would have done, so we applaud them, and they have their strategies. I think at the end, they brought it right to the heart of the middle when Prosecutor John Guy said, if the roles were reversed and you had Trayvon Martin profile and follow and then kill unarmed George Zimmerman, what would your verdict be then? And I think that's the heart of the matter here, equal justice, because we all know what would have happened. And when the defense lawyer for the killer of Trayvon Martin says if he would have been black, he doesn't think that he would have been arrested, that's asinine. You can go in any courtroom in America, you sit in that courtroom and watch the alarming rate at which black males are prosecuted and convicted, not without hardly any evidence.
A couple of questions on where we go from here. Will the family file a wrongful death civil lawsuit against George Zimmerman?
Well, the family is going to explore all of their legal options. Right now, they're still trying to make sense of this tragedy. As Sabrina Fulton said, Wolf, she will not let this verdict define Trayvon Martin. They will define Trayvon's legacy. And I think a big part of that legacy is having the Department of Justice answer that question, because the defense strategy seemed to suggest because there was a crime committed by an African-American male in that gated community, then the neighborhood watch volunteer had an open license, had a right to profile and follow any black teen walking through his neighborhood. Now, the United States Supreme Court said not even the police can profile based on race. So we're going to let private citizens do it. And if that's not the case, then they need to protect Trayvon Martin's civil rights that were violated on February 26, 2012, when his killer followed him and shot him in the heart.
Final question, Tracy Martin and Sabrina Fulton, the parents of Trayvon Martin, how are they doing?
Well, obviously they were heartbroken, Wolf, but as Ms. Fulton said, we have to roll up our sleeves now, and we have to do even more work to make sure this doesn't happen to anybody else's child, especially with this verdict being handed down. And Mr. Martin thanks everybody for all the peaceful protests. And as he says, Trayvon can't rest in peace if we're not peaceful.
The peaceful, a key word, obviously. Benjamin Crump, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
This important programming note to our viewers, please be sure to tune in tonight for an Anderson Cooper special report, Juror B37 in her own words. That will air at 10 p.m. Eastern tonight, only here on CNN. When we come back, a fiery debate just ahead over the controversial Stand Your Ground law. The Reverend Jesse Jackson is here together with a prominent Tea Party activist. They have very different views on Stand Your Ground. They will debate. Also, dangerous 100-degree temperatures baking the Northeast right now. Relief may not be in sight for days. We'll have the latest forecast. Stay with us.